It's literally 3 o'clock in December in England, and it doesn't look that dark outside, but it's just so dark in here and there's nowhere else I can go, so sorry about that. But this is my worst slash most disappointing books that I finished in 2020 video. I've just filmed my best books that I read this year. If you haven't watched that and you're interested, then I will link it like somewhere on the screen, in the description, whatever. But this is the worst slash most disappointing books. I only read 34 books this year, which isn't tons, but I did have 6 books that were not my jam. The first book that I did not enjoy this year was J.A. Curley's The Killing Game. I bought this thinking it was a completely different book. I thought it was like The Killing Lessons by Sol Black is what I wanted to buy. Saw this in a charity shop, picked it up. It was not the book I wanted to buy, but I thought whatever, it's just one of your typical detective crime stories, one of the ones that you can just like go into at any time. So I think this one is like book 9 in the series, but it doesn't really matter. Carson Ryder is the main detective in this story. Seeing as this is book 9, you would think that the detective would be likeable. He was not. He was literally so arrogant and annoying. He would like randomly talk about like things that he'd done as a cop, and it was just the most like up his own arse stuff I've ever witnessed. He also pursues a relationship with a student cop that he's like teaching, which is a bit weird if you ask me. And then like every time he goes to a crime scene, he like rings up this girl and it's like, come and do this, it's for your training. And I'm like, right, so you clearly like want this girl, fine, but you're also putting other students at a disadvantage because you're getting this girl to like come to every freaking crime scene that you go to. But anyway, more on the girl in a second. The love interest in this story, can't remember her name, might have been like Wendy or something. She was the worst written love interest I've ever read. She was meant to be so beautiful, so athletic, so smart, so amazing, but she just had like no personality, no life to her whatsoever. There was an attempted suicide scene in this book where this bloody girl decides to like lift her top up or something to like stop this guy from committing suicide, and that's meant to work because she's so sexy. And look, I've taken my bra off. Like, it's literally so bad. Hated that one. I will definitely be like giving this back to the charity shop at some stage because I don't really want it on my shelves because I didn't like it. Also, the story was so annoying. You know who the villain is from the start, and that's fine. I don't mind that. The villain was the only interesting character in this book, but the way that it ended was the worst ending. It was the most unsatisfying ending. I just don't know why the author would ever decide to end it in that way. And I know it's a series, but it kind of like closed this off. Like it didn't say that it would continue in the later books, which really irritated me. Not that I'm going to read them anyway. The next book that I didn't like was The Surgeon by Tess Gerritsen, and this is like one of the first books that I read this year, so it didn't put me in good stead, to be honest. This is another one of your detective series books. They are usually one of my favourites, but this one was just not for me. I didn't like the female detective lead at all. There was a lot of talk about feminism and sexism, but if anything, the female detective sort of came off as sexist herself. She also kept saying how she deserved like more credit for the things that she was doing, which would have been fine had she not been a crap detective. She makes a really big mistake in this book and it's actually really embarrassing. And she still thinks that she's like the best cop ever, and that the only reason she doesn't get more credit is because she's a woman. Okay. Also, there was just like weird things about this book that seemed a bit sexist. I couldn't like give you a quote or anything, but there was just some things that left me a bit like, ooh, you know? I didn't even say what it was about. It was basically about a serial killer who kills women. And yeah, some of the things that are said about the victims in here just didn't sit well with me. Definitely won't be reading any further into the series. So yeah. The next book that I didn't really like this year was The Angel of the North by Annie Wilkinson. This isn't the sort of book that I would have picked for myself anyway, but somebody at work gave it to me and I felt bad not reading it, so I read it, read the whole thing. Would have put this down after like a few chapters had I not felt bad for not reading it after my colleague lent it to me. This one was set during World War II in Hull, and we were following this nurse who was in a relationship with this guy who was a douche. Her younger siblings were causing problems in her life. It was honestly just so boring. Like, I was actually so bored. There was so much repetition. Like, something would happen and it would be told as a scene, and then this nurse character would go and tell somebody else what had just happened, and you would have to read the entire dialogue of that. So you were reading everything twice. All she did was like whinge and whine, and she had valid reasons, I understand that, but it just came across as very like whiny. Also, the guy that she like is with is such an arse, and it ends up with it not even being a big deal anymore, and everything about it was just weird. Like, so spoilers here, the boyfriend of this nurse was sleeping with this other woman called Hannah, I think, and when she like finds out about it, he plays it off as, well, she put it on a plate, so why wouldn't I take it? I'm only a man after all. And like, oh, and you weren't giving it to me, so I obviously had to go get it somewhere else. And we were just meant to be like, yeah, I get that, I understand why he did that. What the like, that was the point where you'd be like, bye. She had other people that would have wanted to be with her, but no, she just wanted to be with this awful guy. In the end, when they finally get married and consummate the marriage, they put it in the weirdest way that's like, I'm taking it back from Hannah, I've got it now, we did it in the proper way. I was like, oh, this is disgusting and rubbish and boring and just pissing me off. So yeah, hate that one. Sorry to my friend who gave it to me. She won't ever see this video. But I did tell her I didn't like it, so. The next book wasn't necessarily a worst book, but it was a disappointing book, and that was Strange Weather by Joe Hill. This is a collection of like short stories slash, what's the other word, novella? They're like 80 pages each, some sort of thing like that. And they're meant to be horror stories that are centered around strange weather. And if you know me, you know that I hate strange weather. I used to have nightmares a lot of the time about strange weather. So I thought for Halloween I would read something that would play on my fears and terrify me even more. However, it did not. I read 2 of the 4 stories. The first one was okay, it was fine. I'm sorry if the camera's changed, I had to delete some stuff because it filled up. So the first story that I read was okay, but there was nothing really that terrifying about it. It's set in like a thunderstorm and there was a bit of a creepy thing happening, and then it just like carried on. Like, it should have ended a lot sooner than it did. I didn't understand the actual ending. I thought I'd missed something. Wasn't my fave. I think I gave it like 2.5, 3 stars, whatever. And then I went on to the next one, which a lot of people said was the best story, and it was called Loaded. And the strange weather element in this was like it was like a forest fire, and it was like slowly getting closer to this town as the story went on. But the horror story was just this, it was all about guns. It was just weird. It wasn't what I wanted. It did disappoint me because I thought this was going to be something that I would really be scared about because of the weather thing. But nah, it just wasn't really for me, and I ended up reading The Troop instead by Nick Cutter, and it was so much better. And I don't think I will finish these stories because I don't know, they were okay, but they were nothing like spectacular. My next disappointing book was The Last by Hannah James, and this is only disappointing because I had really high hopes going into it. I saw the summary on Goodreads which said this was set in a hotel just after a nuclear apocalypse, and then there's also a murder mystery in there. So I was like, this sounds like my perfect book. It sounded really creepy. I love like post-apocalyptic stuff. Nuclear bombs terrify me and fascinate me at the same time, so I just thought this would be insane. But unfortunately I ended up giving this like a 3 out of 5. It wasn't a bad book at all, it just really disappointed me because I thought I would really love it. Reasons why I didn't like it: I didn't like how it ended, and I thought that the murder mystery side either wasn't needed or wasn't done very well. I did like the like survival post-apocalyptic, you know, how are this group of people stuck in this hotel gonna survive? And I think that the murder mystery did play off on like the closeness of the residents in the hotel, like forced, trapped together, not knowing who each other were, really well. But I just, like, he barely mentioned this murder mystery. our main character would like find things that could help him solve this mystery and would be like, I'll look at it in a couple of days, it's fine. And it was just like, why? It was just like dragging it out, I think. It wasn't the best, but I did like the survival side of it, so it wasn't the worst, but I was definitely disappointed with it because I'd hyped it up in my head so much, and I'd seen it like everywhere. I'd seen a lot of people reading it, I'd seen it like at the front of my Waterstones and stuff like that, so I just thought it would be really good, and it was just like And then my last disappointing book of this year was Tell No One by Harlan Coben. I love crime fiction, and Harlan Coben is one of those names who is quite prevalent in crime fiction. He's written a lot of books and a lot of them are very popular. He wrote The Stranger, which was made into like a Netflix show recently. Did he also write Safe? That was a Netflix show, potentially. I'm not sure. But I read The Stranger, the book, and I really liked it. I really liked the ending and it really surprised me, and I wanted to read another one. We were following this doctor who a few years ago had lost his wife to a serial killer, and in the present day he gets an email from somebody, but the subject, like the subject line, has something in it that only his wife would know. So he's then thinking, hang on, my wife died, somebody went and identified her, like there's no way that she can be alive, but things start unfolding that suggests that she might be, and it was fine. I wasn't really that invested in it though. There was some weird stuff about race in there, I don't know. There were just certain things in there that were like, so there's this white middle class doctor being helped by this black criminal, and he's making comments about like how the other half live, and like I don't know, there was just certain things. I think it was trying to be like aware of race, but just the way in which it was written just like didn't sit well with me, and I don't know if I'm being a bit over dramatic by saying that, but yeah, it definitely just seemed a bit odd and a bit, I don't know, like it shouldn't really have been coming from this middle class white doctor. So there was that aspect which I didn't like, and then the ending was just told in a way which I really didn't like. I feel like there was way too many plot reveals, which is not something that I would ordinarily say, but there was too many twists coming one after the other. I'd barely processed the last one, and then a new twist would come which like went against the previous one. I just got to a point where I didn't care, because I was like, well, in 2 pages are you going to tell me that that wasn't the case anyway? I just didn't care at the end. And then there's another reveal, like at the very end, like last page reveal, and I hate that. I really hate when things are revealed on like the last page. Maybe it's just like a pet peeve of mine, but I really don't like when things are revealed on the last page, and something was, and I was just like, don't care. Close the book, end of, put down. Actually I read it on my Kindle, so I didn't do that, but if I had the physical book I would have done, and I probably would have just chucked it behind me as well. So not a bad book, just a disappointing book because I had such high hopes from The Stranger. And that, my friends, as we are coming to pitch blackness outside. No, we're not. I said this in the last video, it literally doesn't look dark outside, but it is so dark in here, and it's annoying me. I'm gonna have to get a ring light or something. Yeah, they were my 3 worst and then 3 most disappointing books of the year. I only read 34 books this year, so there's not a wide choice to pick from, but I hope you enjoyed nonetheless. And if you haven't watched my best of video, then I would recommend you go check that out as well. And let's all hope that 2021 will be a much better year. So yeah, thanks for watching, goodbye.